Let's ask the community.
Hey, Equity
Hi, I
Mate.
just had a question.
Hey, Bryce, friend. I've got a
So now we have
question.
two questions, both on the same topic. So we're going to listen to them. First one is from Reese, and then we've got one from Jason.
Hey, Equity Mates, it's Reese here, long time listener, first time caller. I have a question in regards to ETFs focusing on military and defence. In the last month, I've noticed a couple of big ETF providers have recently listed ETFs in this area. I wanted to get your perspective whether this is just a bit of an opportunity by the ETF providers or if this is something that you can sink some funds into long term and expect some decent returns. Love to get your thoughts. Thanks.
Hey guys, I'm fairly new to investing in ETFs and I've been listening to your podcast to learn. I have a question about the new defence ETFs, particularly DFND, DTEC and ARMR. I'd like to get one as a bit of a satellite. DTEC, I believe, is the only one to have shares in DroneShield, which is of an interest to me as this is the first company I bought. Just wondering if you have any thoughts on this or have researched it. Thanks, bye.
Love it. Well, thank you for the questions, Reese and Jason. If you would like to submit, head to equitymates.com/contact, or there'll be a link in the show notes to leave us a voice message. We love hearing from you guys. So let's kick into it. Let's start off firstly with the three ETFs that these guys are talking about. They've just come to market. We've got the BetaShares Global Defense ETF. The ticker is ARMR. That was launched on the 4th of October, 2024. Then there's the Global X Defense Tech ETF DTEC, which was launched on the 7th of October, 2024. And the VanEck Global Defense ETF DFND, which was the 10th of September 2024. So all within the space of about a month, Ren, we've got three of the large providers dropping defense ETFs. Seems opportunistic.
Yeah, it seems like they're probably responding to what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
Now, one thing we always remark on is the ASX tickers that these ETF providers are able to secure. They're always very on theme. So, before we get into the details, which of the three do you reckon got the best ticker? Armor, DTEC, or Defend?
Armor or Defend?
Yeah. I quite like Defend, to be honest.
Yeah. I can see DTEC's an interesting one, though, because it's actually quite descriptive of the fund. But yeah, they've all done pretty well, to be honest.
Yeah, so, well, I mean, they're all... Oh, in terms of the tickets.
Yeah.
So, in terms of these ETFs, let's just rip through some of the key things that we look at. So the objectives, are they all trying to do the same thing? They all track their own slightly different indexes.
Yeah.
But in terms of the objectives, BetaShares provide exposure to leading companies involved in the global defense sector. VanEck, portfolio of listed global companies involved in military or defense industries. Sound pretty similar. Global X, a little bit different. Access to companies at the forefront of defense innovation.
Yeah.
Now, is that just a twist and they actually have the same companies under the hood? We will see. But yeah, they're more focused on technology and innovation rather than just the big companies in the space.
I think also importantly, when you do look at this, you need to go under the hood for the BetaShares one as well. They only have to pass a hurdle of 50% of a revenue needs to be tied to the defense sector. So don't think that these are hardcore in all way, shape and form access to defense.
I actually think that's the same in VanEck.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense because they're very similar.
And I would hazard a guess that there's probably a similar rule for
They usually are with
X.
these thematics because it's hard to get companies that are 100%.
Yeah, so the question is Boeing. Like,
yes.
does Boeing is a defense contractor
Yeah.
that does do a lot of work for the US government, but you wouldn't expect to see it in a defense ETF.
No.
And that's sort of how you screen out some of those.
So the next thing we look at are fees. So Armor, the BetaShares one, is 0.55%. DTEC by Global X is 0.5%, and Defend by VanEck is 0.65%.
So on the higher end.
Yes, certainly on
For
the higher end.
Yeah, for thematics. Now, top holdings. So if you go to the ETF issuer's website, you can see the full list of holdings. I'll just read out the names and then we can discuss anything that stands out. So BetaShares in order of biggest to smallest in the top 10. Palantir, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Safran, Northrop Grumman, General Dynamics, BAE Systems, L3 Harris Technologies, Rheinmetall, Leidos Holdings. So some familiar names, some less familiar names. If we go to Global X, Lockheed Martin, RTX Corp, which is actually Raytheon for people playing along at home. It's the same company. Then Palantir, Northrop Grumman, General Dynamics, BAE Systems, Leidos Holdings, L3 Harris Technologies, Parsons Corp, BWX Technologies. So if we just pause there, like some pretty similar names in both of those two ETFs.
Yes.
Now,
Palantir gets a run.
Palantir does get a run.
Yeah.
Let's touch on that in a second. I think it's worth just noting, though, that we said that Global X has a slightly different bent.
Yep.
They're talking about defense innovation and defense technologies. But the BetaShares and Global X top holdings, they look very similar.
They do.
So that's an important thing to just note. VanEck top holdings, though, they look quite different. Palantir, Leidos, Booz Allen Hamilton, Thales, Curtis Wright, Leonardo, BWX Technologies, Kaki International, Huntington Ingalls Industries, and KBR. So VanEck, they say their objective is a list of global companies involved in the military or defense industries. And if you're buying that, what you'd expect to see is companies like RTX or Raytheon, Lockheed, Northrop Grumman, General Dynamics, like the big defense contractors. None of them sit in VanEck's top 10.
Yeah, which is interesting. So then you got to look at what index they're tracking underneath. That's going to be this. That's going to be the story to this. There's only 28 holdings in the VanEck, whereas the BetaShares has 42 holdings in total, and Global X I think is about 35.
Yeah, and VanEck, it's not just the top 10 doesn't have those big names. Those big names are not in the 28 holdings in the ETF.
No.
So, I mean, obviously everyone needs to make their own decision about what ETF is right for them. But I would say in terms of being not really true to label and the highest fee, I'm probably putting a line through the VanEck one first.
Nice. Okay, well, fair call, Ren, putting a line through that one. How about performance then? How have they differed in performance between? I mean, they haven't been out for very long, to be honest.
So I think
a couple of months, so it's a bit unfair, but
none of them have enough time to. I mean, no, some of them have only been out for a week. Yeah. So BetaShares and VanEck, full credit to them. They actually track the index hypothetically back over a few years. So BetaShares go back to 2017 and say, if this had been an ETF, like how has this index gone? And then VanEck go back 3 years. Global X have just got nothing. BetaShares over the past 3 years, 22.9% a year. VanEck over the past 3 years, 26.7% per year. BetaShares since back 2017, so almost 7 years, 15% a year. So they've done pretty well, these thematic ETFs.
Pretty well, but I think almost in line with S&P 500, for example.
True.
So
true.
like,
that's very true.
I don't think major outperformance at all. I think back to the questions like, is this a good time? Should I be thinking about these long term? And I love Drone Shield, so should I be buying them?
Well, that's an easy one to answer.
Yes.
Drone Shield is 0.15% of the ETF.
Yes.
It is not going to move the ETF.
No.
So if you want exposure to Drone Shield specifically, don't do it through this ETF. Just buy Drone Shield.
Yes. In terms of the should I be buying this for the long term, etc., like as we say with all things thematic, these shouldn't be thought of as bottom drawer core portfolio positions. It might be a coincidence that 3 of the major providers here in Australia have launched around the same time in an environment where this thematic is very front of mind, and there are a lot of companies that are front of mind, i.e. Drone Shield, one of them, that have been doing very well. And it is the job of these providers to release products that are in the investing ecosystem and front of mind. Like, that is their business. To expect that these growth rates continue and all of those sorts of things, I think just buyer beware. Thematic ETFs come with the risk that you need to, I guess, stay attuned to what is actually going on with that thematic. Don't put them in the bottom drawer and let it go.
I'm going to go harder than that. I don't think this is a good thing. Like, nice. So thematic ETFs make sense when you say a rising tide will truly lift all boats. You know, like cybersecurity spending is rising across the board, and every company, all these cybersecurity companies are seeing revenue increase because it's just like across the board more spending and everyone's benefiting. I don't think you say that about defense industry spending. I think what you often see is that there are big winners and losers. Like there are big bulky contracts, and some companies do particularly well and some companies sort of are out of favor. And if you want to ride the defense industry thematic, it's probably worth just doing the work and figuring out which companies have technology which is in vogue. And, you know, Drone Shield is in vogue because drone warfare is emerging in Ukraine, or Raytheon, or now RTX Corp, is in vogue because a lot of their missile technology is sort of being used in the Middle East. A company like General Dynamics, which I'm pretty sure has a lot of tank contracts. You know, tanks were really out of favor, but now we're seeing tanks come back into favor in Eastern Europe, and so maybe they'll do well. But, you know, Lockheed Martin, a lot of their revenue comes from the F-35 fighter jets and you know, what's going on there. Like, you probably want to be a little bit more specific if you want to play this theme, rather than just assuming there will be a general increase in defense spending and everyone will benefit, because I don't think that's how it really plays out.
Well, thank you nonetheless for your questions, Reese and Jason. As we said, if you would like to ask a question, please leave a voice note. We love hearing from the community and playing your questions on the show. There will be a link in the show notes, or you can head to equitymates.com/contact.
I will say this about investing. Everything you do learn is cumulative. What I learned at 20 is useful.